Hey everybody, it's Christina of CraftyPaws. I'm here to share with you guys a detailed Copic coloring process video. I made this really simple card just using an old Cuttlebug Provo Craft embossing folder and this adorable stamp from Picket Fence Studios called Jill Girl. And I love how it came out, just really clean and simple. And here goes the coloring. So I thought I would really show you guys the detail of how I go about coloring wavy hair like this. So what I do is I take the lightest color. This is, in this case, it's black hair, so I'm using a really pale blue for the highlights. And every time there is kind of an arch, like the top part of a hill in the hair, I'm coloring it with this B00. So I did the left side first, and now I'm going over to the right side. And if you look at somebody's part, the part right at where the hair meets the scalp is left skin color. And then there's a dark area right on either side. And then the highlight where the hair bumps up a little bit, and that's blue, or in this case, the highlight. So I went to both sides, put in those blue highlights, and then I'm blending in the blue highlights with a kind of lighter mid-tone cool gray, which I'm using C4 for this. You don't have to stick with the exact colors that I use, but I find that the cool grays is really great to use for black or brunette hair. And I just wanted to blend in from those blue highlights to where the hair would be more black in appearance with this mid-tone cool gray. So anywhere where the blue shifts down a little bit is with that cool gray. And then now I'm going in with my darkest shade. I've picked a C8 to really find where I think the deep valleys in the hair would be. So any place that has like a deep U shape rather than the N shape for the blue highlights, those deep U shapes get the C8, the darkest shade that I'm using. And on the ends where there's like a wave, the bottom sides of the two ends of the wave would be that darkest color. And you can see already there's a lot of dimension that gets created, even though I haven't really connected the mid-tone with that darker C8. Just that contrast creates a lot of texture and dimension. And again, I'm trying to find those areas that are underneath, right by her face, where her scarf meets her hair. Sorry, my hair is in the way over there. I didn't realize it was in frame. Anyway, I'm just trying to find those low lights. And then now for this midtone, connecting that C4 area with that C8 area with a C6. And you can kind of see how now the hair is starting to blend together, that it doesn't look so stark and jaggedy. It looks more wavy, which is what I was going for with her hair. And I don't know if other people color this way. I just find that this works for me. And I just take my time. Obviously, I've sped up this camera filming just so that the video doesn't turn out to be like an hour long. But I really take my time when I'm trying to find these low lights, the highlights, and then connect the two ends of the spectrum, as it were. So you can see it's getting to look more wavy, very naturally dimensional, connecting that darkest to the mid-tone gray. And I'm just making sure that I don't leave any stark cardstock white in those areas where I was trying to put in a highlight. Now for the skin color, I want her to have like a yellowish undertone skin color. So I'm starting with an E50, and then I'm going in and marking in where the darkest shadows would be with an E11. So right underneath where her hair meets her face, where her face meets the scarf, underneath her nose, on the edges of her face. Those are the areas where I put in that E11. Then I put in an R24 for her lips. I wanted it to look kind of a natural red. And then I'm going in with my second to darkest skin tone, an E53, to blend in from those edges. And I also wanted to mark in kind of the valley areas of her face. So on either side of her eyes, above her eyes, you know, kind of that skin area above her eyes, on either side of her nose, and then also blending in from her cheeks where I had put in an R20 for a blush color. Now I went back in and blended in with an E51. Unfortunately, my E51 was drying out a little bit, so it's a little splotchy here, but it ends up blending in nicely once I put an E50 over top of that and once the ink kind of dries from the paper. I'm lightening up a couple of areas, the middle parts of the area above her eyes, kind of on her nose. Those areas I put in some 0 just to push away some of the color. And then I went back in and re-emphasized the darkest shadows with that E11. I really find that going back in with the darkest shade helps kind of get that full range of color. Now I'm taking a Signo Uniball white gel pen to put in highlights into her eyes, and then for her scarf. So again, this image has a lot of texture to it, and I wanted to make sure that I really went with the full range of color. So at the beginning, I'm putting in that base, really pale pink with that RV52. And then I'm going in and marking in the shadowed areas. So wherever there are lines of the knitwear texture, I'm going in with that a darker tone. So those valley areas in the knit would be darker anyway. And I think that this image, while it might be intimidating, is actually really easy to color because it has all these texture lines in the image. So you don't have to wonder where the texture is going to come from. It's in all of those little textured lines of that knit scarf, that really chunky knit scarf. So I'm going in. The scarf is wrapped twice around her neck, so you can see that I wanted to make sure I went all the way across underneath that area from the top wrap to the bottom wrap. And then I'm going in especially on the sides of the scarf, really making sure I catch all of those detailed texture knit lines with this darker pink. If you're interested in all of the Copic colors that I use, I always list them in my blog post, which is linked in the description box below. And you can see already there's so much dimension just with that. And then I go in and I'm coloring in the mid-tone, that pink on the edges where I know the shadows should be a little bit darker. Sorry, I'm a little bit out of frame here when I'm coloring up the mug. But basically what I'm doing is connecting that darkest pink with the lightest pink with this kind of mid-tone, making sure that I extend the cast shadow areas underneath the first wrap above, right underneath her nose, along the edges of the scarf. I want to make sure that I'm getting where I want the shadowed areas kind of outlined in place. And at this point, it's kind of surprising, but that darkest pink is kind of blending into that midtone. So I wanted to add more contrast. So I went with an even darker pink. This is an RV69. And I thought this extreme contrast was actually really helpful. It helped make her scarf pop and not fade away too much in the background as compared to her dark hair. So it might be also why the clothes that I wear also tend to be darker because my hair is black. I like to kind of keep that same intensity of color in my outfits. And that's one way you can kind of think about how to pick colors for your coloring projects. I also love the color blue. It's my favorite color. So I usually incorporate that if I can in a natural way. So I'm coloring up her sweater with this combination of blues. And then I laid down the lightest color. Then I'm trying to map out where the darker colors are, kind of the underneath parts where her sweater cuff meets her mittens, underneath her hair, where the scarf meets the sweater, all those areas that would have a shadow or be a valley and also potentially have a cast shadow. I also wanted to follow the concept of the shadowed being areas being underneath, like where her forearms are darker underneath. And then I'm blending in with the midtone, that B45, which really blends in really nicely between the 21 and the 37. And if you're wondering how I pick my colors, There's no real science to it. I use my color chart and think about what colors would blend easily together. I usually stay in the same color family, although sometimes I mix it up. And here I'm just actually realizing that I forgot to color up the mittens, and I didn't want to introduce yet another color. So I decided I was going to make her have a matching set of scarf and mittens. And also, I guess, the cup cozy. So I started in just laying in the lightest color. And this time I started with what was the mid-tone in the scarf. I just wanted to see if I could add a little bit of contrast between the scarf and the mittens and start with a darker round of 3 colors. So I went with the medium, light medium, dark medium, and then the darkest color. And I'm blending those two together. The RV66 blends nicely. Then with the RV55, I'm blending all the way out. And then I decided, oh, the mittens might look just a teeny bit too dark. So I brought back in the lightest color, and I'm pushing away some of that color, especially the RV55 areas, to lighten up the mittens a little bit, just so that it matches a little bit better with the scarf. Now for the mug, I didn't want to introduce, like I said, another color family, so I went with a C1 and a C3 just to add some dimension to the cup. I didn't want it to look flat, so just around the edges. Then I took an oval die and cut out the image, and I'm just showing you a little snippet of making the background. I decided to keep it simple and just use that Cuttlebug embossing folder that had an argyle print to it. And I'm just adding a bit of color toward the bottom. I'm trying to match up the print or the pattern. I'm just going to shave off a sliver off the side. And then I decided I wanted to have a nice border area. I have a little scrap of kind of mid-tone blue, and I'm going to put that in right between where the pale blue and the white backgrounds meet for a nice kind of area where forms a nice border. And then I'm going to cut off the bottom a little bit off camera, and then you can see I used some fun foam just to add some dimension. I couldn't find my double-sided foam adhesive. And then this sentiment I just printed off my computer. I love hot coffee, sweater weather, and you. And then this is the finished card. I hope you've enjoyed this process video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys are having a wonderful crafty day.